Record just recording in case we have any problems with the live stream. Okay, we're live. You're on, Gary.
Hey, welcome everybody. Good to see this screen here. I hope you all enjoyed the eclipse. At my last board meeting last night, I displayed everybody coming in, total eclipse of the sun while everybody's coming in and everybody's freaking out. I had my solar glasses on. And, that was cool. Anyways, hope you had a chance to enjoy it. Let's talk about the Hudson 7 hybrid meeting procedure to start off. Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's hybrid monthly meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 10th. So my name is Gary Bassett. I am the mayor of the Village of Rhinebeck and I'm chair of the Hudson 7. Hudson 7's hybrid meetings will be streamed live on the Hudson 7's YouTube channel, as you're seeing right now. The public is advised to subscribe to this channel. Our in-person meetings occur here at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Facility located at 3431 North Road, Poughkeepsie in New York. Public comment is allowed both in person and remotely. Please visit our website to learn everything you can about the Hudson 7. And you can also provide public comment by visiting www.hudson7.org. In attendance tonight, we'll go around the room and then on the board. I'm going to start to my right.
Rebecca Martin, I'm the Source Water Protection Coordinator as a consultant for the Hudson 7.
To my left.
Peter Galino, Environmental Program Director for Dutchess County.
Hello, Nick Butler, Town of Esopus Water Superintendent.
Danielle Freer, Supervisor, Town of Esopus.
Liz Mosqueda, Hyde Park Town Board Member.
Richard Distil, City Planner, City.
On my screen, looking at it, Paul, you're in the top left.
You're muted,
You're
Paul.
muted, Paul. All these years.
Paul Malmrose, Technical Engineering Consultant.
Russ, you're next.
Russ Gilmore, Town of Lloyd.
And
Dan Shapley, Little League coach. I'm going to be leaving early tonight. Also a technical advisor.
hope you don't get rained out. Rebecca.
Rebecca Edwards, Town of Poughkeepsie, and Ann Shershin texted to say that she's on her way in person and should be there shortly.
Oh, very good. Emily.
Emily Svensson, Technical Advisor.
Drew.
Hi everyone, Drew Gambles from Riverkeeper, just here tonight to give an update on anchorages and Chippy.
And Ben.
Hey, Ben Gannon from Ulster County.
And Shannon just logged in. Shannon, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hi, this is Shannon, Science Director at Riverkeeper.
Okay, so we have a quorum this evening to conduct regular business. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We've done roll call and determination. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from March 13th, 2024. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, Elizabeth is not on, so we will have to bypass the treasurer.
I have her report.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Very good.
So Elizabeth Spinzia, our treasurer, who is supervisor of the village Rhinebeck.
Town
Town of Rhinebeck. Sorry, is sick. So her report is as of March 31st, the balance for the Hudson 7 is $51,503.05. The interest earned to date is $294.07. Coordinator paid to date is $18,750. The city of Poughkeepsie is still needing to pay their dues of $5,000. And Elizabeth will re-invoice the city next week. And that's it.
Okay, Rebecca, your report.
Yeah, so I've sent around my coordinator report for March. Just a refresher, it's organized in terms of the goals that Hudson 7 identified last year, the work that you want to achieve in the next in 12 months from August to August. There's a lot of items in here. Would you like me to walk through them? Or would you prefer to have questions? Just all of the incremental things that we're doing, each month. So does anyone have any questions? No?
Keep up the great work.
Okay. Well, let me just say this in case you haven't reviewed it. So there's a number of goals. Hudson 7 identified 8 of them. There's our organizational work, which is what we do every month, scheduling meetings, meeting with Mayor Gary Bassett every week. We are working to create a 501c3, but really it's an organizational structure. We've been working away at that. We continue to establish policies and procedures for the Hudson 7. All of that really is going to follow once there's a new structural organization in place. But we do have a motions document that's public facing that lists all of the actions that we've taken since 2018. I am pursuing Bruce from eCode, who's away this week, in order to talk about a repository system for the council's documentation.
So let's stop there. If anybody has a good idea or repository, E-code, I know most municipalities use, but if there's somebody has a better thought or a different thought, please let us know, because we're searching for a way to kind of sort of building up this document database.
Right now we're using our Google Doc and Google Files. Developed a strategy for maintaining sustainable funding. One of the projects that's ongoing is kind of creating what Dan and I have been calling a Hudson 7 book, and it outlines all of the council's efforts on all of the issues that the council's been engaged on in order to help to tell the story of the Hudson 7. Can be used for municipalities, and counties, and grant making, etc. in the future. Becoming an important resource for drinking water operators. We've established the water treatment plant committee. We've been met last month. We're meeting again this month. Talk about that later. We've refreshed our shared services files, which is really good. It's a dynamic sheet, and the water plants are listing the items that they have. They can cross or share their services. This is a very long list. I don't know how efficient this is, but I'll keep going. We're outreaching to we outreached to Mike Keating this month, the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, to find out if maybe he could present to the Hudson 7 at some point in the near future. Our goal for education, we have a blog, we're communicating, we've uploaded a fact sheet that's hopefully helpful for council members. Last month, the Drinking Water Source Protection Program meets monthly. Of updates tonight. A salt front study is also a goal. There's no activity in March. To maintain our watchdog role on key issues. This month we've brought in Shannon Roback, who will provide a presentation tonight on Hudson River PCBs and impacts to drinking water. The Chippy Committee, this month I created a memo for you. There's been a lot of activity to compile everything that's been coming in through the Hudson 7 site, so you can have that and follow along. We'll talk about that more later. The Lower Sopus Creek, I'm working with Paul to support Paul's efforts, and as a member of the Chilton Reservoir working group on behalf of the Hudson 7 and the Anchorages Committee. And tonight we have Drew Gamels, who's going to give us an update on the Hudson River Act and the impacts to our work on the regulated navigational areas. So that's what we've been doing this month, a lot of things. And there's a lot of timely next steps in our document, and it's great to work for council and with all of you. Thank you.
Rebecca, you don't hear from Michael Keating, let me know and I'll circle up with them.
Thank you.
I have a deal, I'm not doing, I have a dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah, he was very responsive.
Yeah.
And would like to, I think he and Gary will talk about what you might be able to present.
Yeah, our office talks with them people. Too.
Great. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You want to keep going with communications?
Yes. Okay, so communications, we only had a couple here. We got an outreach from Jacinta Chen, who's the new Hudson Valley Regional Director for Senator Gillibrand. It's now on all of our communications. It's very nice that she checked in. And Paul Melrose sent a summary of regulations and issues Hudson 7 is facing, is prepared by the American Water Working Association. Bless you. And that's linked in the communications agenda.
Excuse me, could I add a communication real quick?
Sure.
It's Emily. I just wanted to share that the Hudson River Estuary Management Advisory Council, which I serve on behalf of the Hudson 7, is at the beginning stages of developing the next action agenda for the Hudson River Estuary. And as a member, we were circulated sort of an advanced draft, and they're looking for input from constituent groups by the end of May. And so I'd like to share this with the council, and maybe if we have a few minutes next month or a small group offline, just look at if there are any suggestions that we want to make as far as drinking water is mentioned much more prominently in this document than it had been in the past. But if there are any suggestions that we want to add to that, we need to do that by the end of May.
Emily, could you share the document right now with us? Later, or send it out to.
Yeah, I'll email it out, but I just wanted to give that little update.
Yeah. That'll give us a premise to work off of.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. We have one public comment tonight. I'm gonna let Catherine Skopik in from Sierra Club.
Do you want to see if you public comment?
What's that?
Should we see if he has? public comment?
Yeah, let's do Catherine first because she signed up. And then, great, yeah. Catherine? Hi, you're muted.
How's that?
Great. You have 3
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, elected officials, officers and members of the Hudson 7, and members of the public. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and to support you. My name is Catherine Skopik. I am a member of Sierra Club and a longtime activist working to help protect our wondrous planet. First, I applaud you for your extensive efforts to preserve the purity of the Hudson River waters, not only for yourselves, but for the sanctity of the river, for all people, for all time. Your continued focus and work to this effect has kept the preservation of the Hudson River active and alive against a myriad of threats against it. Secondly, we know preservation is superior to cleanup and restoration after the fact, not only because of its smaller cost, but also because 100% restoration is rarely possible. What would happen to the river if cables were placed 15 feet under the riverbed for part or all of its length? What would happen to us if we had a cable foreign to our bodies placed underneath our skin from our toes to our shoulders? Why do I ask this question? Make this comparison. Like us, the river is a living being, a living entity, as are we. The river supports life. The river is a complex combination of integrated dependent life forms of which we are a part. The river is life. Therefore, We work to preserve the Hudson River in its full essence as we work to protect ourselves. Thirdly, I am here to offer my support to you in whatever way, whatever kind of support I can give, small or large. I can and I will. Recently, thousands of us, elected officials, a wide variety of organizations, and hundreds of grassroots activists work to prevent tritiated radioactive water from being dumped into the Hudson. I believe it is possible for thousands of us again to work together to preserve the Hudson River in this instance as well. And I am ready to try. Thank you. Respectfully and in peace, Catherine Skopik.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
My name is John Rath. I am a member of the Mid-Hudson Sierra Club. I don't know that Catherine and I would say the same words, but what I want to let you know is that the citizens of Poughkeepsie have a comfort level with what you're doing, that you're on top of the key critical issues. Every time I turn on my tap, I'm drinking the water right out of there. And so my sense is that of many groups, you folks are really trying to balance the pros and the cons and come up with the best solutions. You're not afraid to push back when you have to, but you also kind of understand the benefits and the costs to every issue. No issue is perfect. Tonight you're talking about PCBs, and I'd stop in to get as knowledgeable as I can about PCBs. Appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
And
Oh, no, I'm on the board. I'm just running late.
you want to come?
Yeah, come on,
Sure.
this.
John, there's a.
Says up to the table.
If you want to join us.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, the traffic on New Paltz was just miserable. And I wasn't expecting to be that way.
Thanks for making it.
Sure.
Okay. As for public comment.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, let's go into business. Under Hudson 501c3, but there's some other stuff in here. Our first motion I'd like to make is to approve all of the invoices from I don't call me, but from Mackey, Butts and Whalen. Their invoices up to 2024 who are here. They've all been reviewed and approved, so I'd like to make a motion to approve and for the county to pay.
Right, the invoice as of March 20th, 2024, all of your source materials.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Great.
Kevin, you may want to talk about just to mention that the extension.
Oh, so the original, we may have mentioned this last time, but the original agreement with Mackey Butts and Whalen was set to expire 2 weeks ago, and so the county has extended that through the remainder of 2024. So that will give us a little bit more time, this working group, to figure out where we're headed. So yeah, that won't be an issue. So that's again a continuation. It's not an addition of funds. It's the continuation of access to the 19,995.
Very good. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Organizational structure, the committee is still meeting. We're really working on defining multiple, I'm gonna say, options in terms of this. One of those options is stay as we are. One of the options is become a one group. One of the options is become into two segments with an arm. So all of that discussion is going on. No decisions have been made. The committee is still dressing and working towards all of those directions, and we'll try to figure that out and then eventually make a recommendation to the to the council.
Right, so maintaining use, remaining a joint municipal board, as we are now. A 501c3 is another option. Establishing a separate 501c3 and maintaining the intermunicipal council. Finding a fiscal sponsor, or working within the joint water board structure. There are 5 different options that we're exploring. And we'll meet again soon. I've been tasked to look to see what organizations might be appropriate fiscal sponsors for a group like ours, just to get all of our research done. And to have Ian, our lawyer, do a little more research to fill out what it would look like to just be a 501c3. And then the committee will meet again shortly to continue those discussions and hash it out. To bring, as Gary said, in the recommendation. Discuss. That's where we're at.
Any questions? Hudson River PCBs.
All right, hello, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. It says I'm the host now, and there's 2 people in the waiting room. Should I let them in?
I don't
Oh.
see anyone. in the room.
Oh.
I think, no, you can go ahead and share. You're host, so you can
Okay.
share.
All right, great. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit today about PCBs in drinking water. So some of you may have heard about PCBs being in fish in Hudson, and that is definitely true. And I'm going to talk a little bit about PCBs as a chemical and their structure and where they tend to end up, and when they get into water, how they can be removed. So chemicals are like people, they're all different. They have all kinds of different characteristics. Some dissolve easily in water, some dissolve more easily in oils and fats. When the latter is the case, we say they're hydrophobic, they're afraid of water. So they are generally have low water solubility and they like to be in fatty tissues. PCBs is one of these types of chemicals, and so it really likes to store in fats, and it also likes to attach to sediment. So if PCB is floating around in the water, and fish eat sediment or pieces of PCBs, or it gets into their system, it's going to make its way into their fat cells and be stored there. So, like I mentioned, there are a lot of PCBs that end up in fish, but not all of them end up in fish. So some do remain in water, even though that's not where they really like to be. There'll be a smaller proportion that are what we call free in water. So this is kind of an environmental mapping of where PCBs might be in a river system. So they might be free in the water, like I mentioned, which is not where they really like to be. So that's not where the majority of PCBs will be. They're much more likely to be in the sediment. And once they're in the sediment, they can be biodegraded by bacteria, which it takes a long time, but does happen. They can also attach to little pieces of organic matter. So organic matter is kind of like dirt. It's the broken down plants and animals that occur everywhere in nature and in water. So the PCBs can attach to that natural organic matter or particle organic matter or dissolved organic matter. PCBs can also be volatilized with sufficient heat. They can be released from water into the air. And then once they are in the air, they will deposit via either wet or dry deposition. So with dry deposition, this is with all air pollution, gravity will settle it out over time. With wet deposition, when it rains, the air pollution will be caught in the rain and brought down to the ground. So what will happen with PCBs is that they are capable of volatilizing and going up into the air and then moving around a little bit and being redeposited either by gravity or during storms. So these are all the different places that PCBs can end up. But like I mentioned, they prefer to be in fatty tissues and attached to sediment. And this again is because they are insoluble in water. They do not dissolve in water very well. Now, the sediment is not, it can move around. So it can be resuspended when there's turbulence caused by ships or by flooding or by construction. And when the sediment is resuspended, then those PCBs can be released back into the water, and some will dissociate from the sediment and become free PCBs again. So when the sediment is disturbed, we would expect to see an increase in PCBs in the water. So PCBs is a family of chemicals, and those chemicals have a different number, each chemical has a different number of chlorine atoms, and the number of chlorine atoms will impact exactly which PCBs are more likely to be in sediments and fatty tissues and which PCBs are more likely to be in water. And basically what we see is that PCBs that have a lower number of chlorines are more likely to be in water, and with a higher number of chlorines are more likely to be in sediment. And like I mentioned, we do know that PCBs can volatilize, especially at high temperatures. So this is something that we'd expect to see increase as climate change progresses and air and water temperatures increase. And there has been actually one study, it was done a very long time ago, that modeled transport of PCBs from the Hudson that volatilized into the air and then were redeposited in other areas of the watershed. So they measured these PCBs in the Neversink watershed at Frost Valley, which is part of the New York City drinking water system, and they modeled the deposition of PCBs in 13 other surrounding watersheds. So exactly how far the PCBs will travel when they volatilize is a function of all kinds of things, especially the weather, but we do know that they volatilize and then will be redeposited in other places. So there have been a couple of studies that have looked at PCBs in raw and treated drinking water in our region. So this was a study from 2008 that looked at 7 different water providers, took samples at the plant influent and the plant effluent. Notably, none of the water samples exceeded the drinking water standard. So there's an MCL for PCBs at 500 nanograms per liter. None of the water systems exceeded the MCL. However, most of the water systems did have some removal through the treatment plants. So the PCBs in the treated water tended to be less than the PCBs in the raw water going into the treatment plants. It was also noted that in the system that was pulling from an aquifer, or the systems that were pulling from aquifers, tended to have higher PCB concentrations. And this is probably due to the higher contact in those aquifers with sediments, just as a proportion of the area compared to the river. There was also a study in Fort Edward. So this is a watershed that's very close to the river. There's also the Caputo disposal site there, which is a depository for transformers and capacitors, which are one of the sort of main industrial culprits in terms of containing PCBs. What was interesting in this study is that there were PCBs detected in a number of the reservoirs, and there was also a pretty high concentration of PCBs detected in the rainwater, which again lends credence to this idea that there's volatilization happening and then redeposition of PCBs in other places. So like I mentioned, in this 2008 study, there was evidence that PCB removal was happening during water treatment. There are a couple of technologies that we know work pretty well for PCB removal. So they're both activated carbons. Activated carbon is similar to what's in a Brita filter actually, but these are used in an industrial scale at a lot of drinking water treatment plants. And that carbon is really good at pulling a variety of different chemicals out of the water. They attach to that carbon filter, and PCBs is the family is one of these groups of chemicals that is sort of well sorbed or well attached to the carbon. There's granular activated carbon and there's powdered activated carbon. There are two different types of activated carbon that both are used by different treatment plants depending on what makes sense for their facility. The powdered activated carbon was found to be a little bit better at removing PCBs than the granular activated carbon. And what the study also found is that if the PCBs were sorbed to that natural organic matter that occurs everywhere through water systems, that broken down plant and animal matter that PCBs likes to attach to, if it was attached to that, there was less removal. As that particle size was bigger, there was less removal by granular activated carbon. But overall, we know that this technology works pretty well. So I will mention one other thing about PCBs in drinking water. So even though PCBs generally don't like to be in the water matrix as much as they like to be attached to sediment or natural organic matter or in fish, there is still some amount of free PCBs that exist in many contaminated waters. So because of that, we have a maximum contaminant level, which is an enforceable maximum amount allowed in drinking water, which is 500 nanograms per liter. I will note that the MCL goal for PCBs is at 0. So again, when we are making regulations and we're making an MCL, the process requires us to first make an MCL goal, which is based only on human health. And then we make an MCL, which considers the feasibility of implementation and the cost of implementation of that standard. And can we even measure that low of a concentration? And then that MCL is set, and that's the enforceable standard. So I spent a lot of time looking through the published literature to see what kind of data was available about PCBs in drinking water in all of New York State, and there's not been a ton of studies. So I'll just note that I recently submitted a FOIA request to get a bunch of data from the last 20 years from all the counties in the Hudson River watershed so that we can get a sense for what PCB concentrations have been reported. Again, it probably will be under the maximum contaminant level for the majority of facilities due to the nature of the PCB chemical and where it likes to be. But we'll go ahead and confirm that data, and I'd be happy to share that once we get that analyzed. So that's it. And yeah, I'll take any questions.
Jenna, could you please let Amanda in, who's maybe in the waiting room? I couldn't see it or do anything about it during the.
Is that A. Laval?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind making Hudson River drinking water host, again, that'd be great. And then questions.
Hey, Paul.
I'd just like to say Shannon did a really great job here. As she mentioned, PCBs don't really like to be in water. So what happens in water treatment plants is they usually settle out in the original settling tank, which almost every water treatment plant has. So it's pretty well removed. Randy's done some studies and found that it was well removed. Now the problem is the PCBs are now in the sludge that we have to get rid of. And there's been no regulations on that, but that would be more of a concern for me than it being in the drinking water. But Shannon did a really great job. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, and just for folks that don't know what Paul's talking about, managing that sludge and the solids that come from wastewater treatment plants, there's all different ways of doing that, but you know, it can be really tricky to figure out what to do with this stuff that is containing all of these contaminants. So it's definitely a big issue, and there's lots of innovation and research, but definitely needs some better methods to deal with that.
And it's scary. So my first question would be, given the current EPA, I think was it patch 3 that's coming out?
The PFAS.
EPA test on the river,
Okay, the 5-year review.
5-year review. Would this be input that could be submitted as part of that? Because for me, their 5-year review has never been focused on drinking, their reviews have never been focused on drinking water.
Drew just popped on too, who's working on those comments with Shannon.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Drew, who's really familiar with the 5-year review and very much in the weeds, to maybe talk a little bit about what is and isn't included.
Right, that's exactly right. EPA has not kind of dived into this issue. What the 5-year review is going to assess is whether the dredging remedy in the upper Hudson River is protective of human health and the environment and functioning as designed. And so that'll be the focus of the review. But I think in our comments back to the EPA on this issue, we're going to try and find a way to incorporate this the drinking water concerns into our comments, and figure out a way to fit them into the exact format that EPA designs their 5-year reviews. There's 3 specific questions that they have to answer, and so we're going to kind of fit it in that trend. But yes, we will be finding a way to incorporate this data into our comments on the 5-year review.
And so to follow up on that, would it behoove the Hudson 7 to weigh in with some sort of documentation or a letter about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the 5-year review is issued, we expect it sometime this spring. I don't have an exact date, but there will be a public comment period, and the Hudson 7 should absolutely submit a letter on the draft 5-year review, focusing on these issues specifically.
Another thing, I'm not sure if you'd be able to pull this together, but if there's any data, especially from the plant influent of these plants, showing what the PCB concentration is that's going into your facilities, that might be really interesting, you know, to kind of, for us to get a sense of the water impact.
Very cool.
During cycles, so I was just looking at my water report from last year, and I didn't have it on there, so I have tested for it, but we're either non-detectable.
I don't think we tested all for it.
Randy and I have talked on it, and I think Brian might talk on it.
Have you?
We're all right, same window for the results.
I'm leaning towards this would be a good segue into the meetings we're setting up with the water operators to try to help. If we have data, and now we can use that data when the time comes.
Yeah, it's a great starting point, absolutely.
Cool. Any other questions? There's no question in the chat.
Oh, Amanda asks, are solids from the first settling tanks the same as sludge? I think that was a question for you.
Yes.
Amanda? You have more?
Nope, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was the same thing. Because then when we think about sludge and where that goes, whether it goes to a municipal landfill or if it goes to one of the regional composting operations.
Most of the sludge goes to landfills, used to make sod or other materials. I know that's what Randy does with his. I think he delivers it to a horse farm and they use it to make sod.
And for the village of Rhinebeck, we're doing the same thing. Considering it to a landfill to make dirt. But I do expect that this will be regulated. If anybody else has a problem, I think regulations are going to come as a result of this kind of study for that sludge.
Right?
Okay,
Thank you, Shannon.
EMCP.
Yeah, so the environmental management and construction plan for segment 19B was released on April the 10th. But the 8th, sorry, the eclipse. And so we're putting all of that information together. We sent it all to the Hudson 7, all the documents, and Drew Gambles is here to speak to us a little bit about what's in the materials. Drew?
Sure. So as Rebecca said, the EMNCP was issued on Monday. It focuses specifically on the Hudson River cable installation. So that is 89.3 miles of submarine cables that are going to be located in the Hudson River. The EMNCP is going to focus mostly on how that cable is going to be installed and any protections of the underwater transmission cable. And the public has at this time, the public has 30 days to comment. So all comments are due by May 8th. We did submit a request for an extension. It has not been granted at this time. So we're operating under, that 30-day time period.
Or you mean they haven't responded to that, or they rejected it?
No, it hasn't been rejected. It is on the docket. So if anyone goes to the Chippy docket, it is the most, at least before I went on this meeting, I double checked to see if anything new was filed. Nothing. So it should be the most recent document filed in the docket. So everyone should see it, and the secretary has to make an opinion. The commission has to make an opinion.
And Drew, would we know when that opinion will be made, the extension?
I have no idea. But as soon as I get any information on it, I will make sure that I share it. We requested a 90-day comment period, really trying to push for the optimal amount of time, given how significant this segment is. Maybe they'll grant a 45-day or a 60-day comment period. If they grant 90 days, I'm buying a lotto ticket. I'll be so excited, but I'm being realistic and I'm hoping they give us some time.
Can you just do a quick update on that amendment petition that Chippy, that TDI had requested, and the depth change kind of up and around our area?
Yeah, so that was going to be the next thing I talk about. The EMNCP was submitted assuming that the petition is granted, meaning that the design in the EMNCP is designed so that the cable will be placed to a depth of 7 feet outside the navigation channel and a depth of 9 feet within the navigation channel. And it is located within the navigation channel for 3.9 miles, which represents about 4% of this segment. Chippy, in the EMNCP, Chippy states that if the petition is not granted, then they'll go back and they'll submit an amendment to the EMNCP. I want to be very clear that the commission has not issued an opinion on the depth amendment change. It is frustrating that Chippy submitted an EMNCP that does not comply with the certificate conditions, which does require a 15-foot depth. And I will be making sure that I bring that up in our comments. It is actually in our extension letter. So if anybody goes to the docket and reads that extension letter, we did already point out that it was frustrating that they submitted it assuming that it would be granted.
And Drew, the area where it's in the channel starts and ends where? That 3.9 mile?
That 3.9 miles ends by Kingston and it starts 3.9 miles north of that area.
Germantown.
Thank you.
So Hudson 7, it looks like Paul has a question. So the document that Drew made that lists all of the materials that were submitted to the PSC docket, Drew, Scenic Hudson and Riverkeeper's extension letter, and then all of the materials, as well as a very specific Hudson 7 file that pulls out the documents that Paul had outlined. It was sent to you today, so everything is there for you to see. Paul, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that, Drew did a great job in listing all the appendices, but the main document is called the EMC Segment 9G narrative, and that is the main document. And I'm not sure if that's in that list, but that's the most important document for us to be reading.
Definitely. I want to emphasize that point. That is critical.
And then if you want to know generally about how this installation is going to be done, that would be item 5A, which is the Hudson River cable installation. The thing that affects us the most is the Hudson River Public Water Supply Protection, which is 9B, and it includes the contingency plan. That's probably the most important document to us. What Rebecca and I did was they didn't give a distance on the grappling hook, and we got confirmation that they would not use the grappling hook within a quarter of a mile of any of our intakes. We questioned it because they didn't use a grappling hook during the pilot test. The pilot test was conducted at 7 feet, so that's a little difference. What I'd really like assistance from all the municipal leaders is to read 1D, which is public involvement, which is going to be what you are going to hear from your residents or people. So it's a very important document for you to read. And as the Hudson 7 has decided, we are not going to respond to this. It's going to be the individual towns that are going to respond to this. So it's important that your operators look at these documents very seriously. Sorry for the long talk.
Great.
And could you talk about why Hudson 7 decided not to respond and have the municipalities do that?
So I'll give the brief response. And when we went through this whole process, at the end of the process, it really was the responsibility of the individual plants to manage their intakes and where they are, because there's a lot of correlation to where the cables are being laid, to where the intake is, and to where, what capacity. So this organization cannot make recommendations for the municipality. Municipalities have to make their own recommendations. We can give advice and guidance. We're not the ones that should be dictating to a water plant.
Okay, thank you.
I get that from a technical standpoint completely, but when we're talking about things like, and I have not looked at it yet, I haven't had a chance to, but as Paul was mentioning, the 1D section about public involvement, would the Hudson 7 take a position on something like that, where it's kind of a broader picture versus the technicalities of the different municipalities?
Good
So
question. I haven't read that either. I haven't read the document.
right, so I'm asking, are there certain parts of the EMCP that the Hudson 7 could, as we're going through it, take a position and submit public comment on?
I think we need to read it and come back and figure that out. I don't have a comment on commenting.
You only have 30 days.
I know.
So,
Unless they grant the extension.
yeah.
Yeah, what's the chance?
So would I, just because I know that there's a lot of new folks too involved, would I plan to do from the town of Esopus perspective is to get with our water super, obviously, our engineers, Ty and Bond, as well as our legal counsel, Victoria Polidor, to really go through the EMCP with a fine tooth comb to make sure that the comments that we provided in the draft made it in there. And just to kind of take a holistic view at the entire EMCP and see where else that we can weigh in. So that's what I plan to do in the town of Esopus, and given the response to the draft, the opportunity that we all had to reply to the draft, I would just encourage you all to really dig in from your perspectives, so that it's not just the Esopus weighing in.
One thing you could do, if you wanted to, is you could, I mean, Paul is gonna look at all of these materials and then we'll no doubt have good recommendations. If there is anything that the Hudson Seven would want to weigh in on, you could make a motion to allow the council, I mean, that's very broad. So I don't know if this is, I'm just laying down an idea, reject it or accept it, is to make a motion that the Hudson Seven could submit a comment letter if it determines that there's something that's general council could actually weigh in on. That's outside of, I think what you're asking is, with the public participation, if there was a more general action that the council could take that's outside of the purview of the individual municipalities with the Hudson Seven.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, if it's a 30-day window, there would have to be a discussion about whether or not the council wants to do something like that. Otherwise, what we could do is just make sure that we're reviewing everything and making sure that everybody gets, like we did with the suggestions, you know, highlight all of the key points to make sure that the municipalities are including those things into their individual.
Yeah, that's my question. What are the specialists saying that the municipality, the town of Hyde Park should be submitting? If you need support for this project and you want something from every municipality, are there key points that you want on letterhead from Hyde Park?
Paul, do you think that, like the last time with the prelay mattressing, that you'll be able to find some time to review the key documents for the Hudson Seven? And we could do another suggestion document to help to support the water plants and their comments?
Well, remember that I reviewed the draft comments. Chippy, because of all our complaining to them, gave us a draft document, and I commented on those documents and I sent them to all the operators, and I don't know what happened after that.
Right, so I think now the homework is to make sure that the comments that were provided are actually in there, because those were just suggestions that we were providing to get into the official EMC.
Right.
So now we need to go back through to make sure that it was included.
Right. And maybe now that we have everything, Paul, we can even refresh those suggestions, because we were missing the appendix 5A, for example, right? We're having, so we could go back and see what we have and refresh and communicate that way.
Yes.
That's another option.
The other thing is that a lot of the documents are sensitive, and you'll see on them that they basically say, we can't tell you anything about this. And, you know, that's it. So I don't know what we do with documents like that.
So there is a committee that's specific to Chippy, right? No?
Don't they're not actually.
So, yeah, we did, and then when we finished, kind of came to a conclusion when it went into MVP. We haven't really met since.
So could one option be that that group reconvenes before the 30-day and makes a determination as a sub body of this group?
Well, it's really, we need our technical advisors to do this, is what we need. We need people like Paul, Drew, you know, to work, to say, here, what are the key points that we need to do? But Paul mentioned, he circulated his draft comments to all of the plants already. And I know we reviewed them with our engineers, and I haven't gotten out with, but they had all of the kind of review as well. We use Delaware in this case from it. But so far I haven't had any feedback of what they're suggesting.
So logistically, if we have 26 days to come up with something, to decide if the council's gonna submit a letter or not. And it's gonna take our advisors a couple weeks to formulate what their opinions on whether or not it is appropriate for us. What can we do now, since we're not gonna be meeting again in time?
But here's my dilemma always. It's the water treatment plants are gonna vary. They're 2,000 feet in the right back. Right, and they're only 800, was it 800 feet from your? Yeah. You know, so there's a huge difference in terms of what each one is gonna see and experience as a result of this. So to say it's common, may not be common.
Right, but I think at least what I'm hearing is there might be things in this plan that we don't know yet, that could be something that cuts across all plans.
Could be.
That we would wanna comment on as a body, right?
So that's why I think we need somebody. We didn't, Paul, was there anything that was common when you did the draft? I don't remember. Going through all.
Well, the big thing was the grappling hooks. The grappling hook is like a rake that goes across the river bottom to pull up any logs or whatever. And then they put the jet plow in that goes down 7 feet or 9 feet. And I was very concerned because the grappling hook was not tested during the pilot test. And Chippy agreed to not be within a quarter mile. Just to give all these new members background, at one time, the cable was going to cross the Esopus pipeline that goes to the intake and the Poughkeepsie. And through our efforts, that's no longer the case. And the other thing is we did an extensive pilot test with them at their expense. They did all the laboratory analysis. We witnessed the test and everything came out very well. I was kind of shocked, maybe even disappointed, but that's what our results showed. So just to give everybody a little background. The one thing I'm concerned about is that Chippy said that, when we're in the water and we're doing this, there could be a problem with another vessel that's going around us or whatever, but we're taking no responsibility for that. And so we need some Coast Guard assistance on that because we can't coordinate that.
The other thing that I would add just from a council point of view too is if we don't comment from a Hudson 7 perspective, how is that going to look or represent this group as a function too? I think we should take a serious
And
think about it.
I agree with, I would say if there's something that's common thread, we can comment. But we've ruled out the grappling. We pushed that out. I don't know of any others that are in that without having somebody come forward and say, this is an issue.
I'm happy to work with Dan, Paul, maybe even Drew, to some extent, based on, the work that Drew is doing for Riverkeeper, to see if there's some sort of a Hudson 7 message.
Right.
Happy to work on
Even
that.
if it's something as easy as making sure that there's a lot of room for public input, right? Like something like that coming from the Hudson 7, I think would speak.
So if you want to raise that and talk and discuss it on the table, that's work I'm happy to do.
Well, we can always convene a meeting too. We don't have to wait. We can call a meeting.
Sure, yeah.
If
Right.
if there's something glaring that comes up, let's call a meeting and do it. That's what you do, that's what I do. Right? If there's something important, we make it happen.
we might have trouble with a quorum. I don't know. I would say if there's any opening for the potential for something that Dan and Paul and I could work on together, make that decision now. And then if,
No, I'm not, I'm gonna say no. Okay, but let's push them up. And because how are we gonna decide? And I'd rather convene a meeting and let's decide and review. I don't want it to be open-ended and say, okay, you just do it. Because I think it's too important.
well,
I go ahead and do the work.
no, it's up to you.
I'm,
It's up to you all.
I'm encouraging to do the work. What I'm not encouraging is leave it open-ended.
What are you defining as open-ended, Gary?
Let them make a decision without bringing it back to the council.
Could it be a situation where we make a motion to give you the authority to determine if what the technical advisors present to you is something where you feel like, okay, this is something that cuts across as common, that you then have the power to go ahead and complete that letter?
You can if that's what you want. I'm happy to do that.
I just am a little worried. Sometimes we have trouble as a body getting a quorum on a scheduled meeting if we can't get it together in time. Hopefully they extend this thing, but
And on that point, would the Hudson Seven have any interest in submitting their own letter seeking an extension, just something short and sweet, saying we'd also like additional time? I know there were previous opportunities, just a thought, just throwing it out there.
I think that's a good idea. To tag on to what you've done.
we could cite this very reason. That doesn't give the council enough time to reconvene and make a motion to move forward.
And so I
We have new materials.
Yeah.
that we didn't have to.
I would definitely say let's do that right away. That's pretty extensive.
Yeah, and what you're actually, how you're framing this, so if the technical advisors review the materials and see that there's something that the Hudson Seven could voice in on, we could present it. I mean, we wouldn't be doing it in a silo. It would go through whatever the process is for there to be approval, for a letter to be drafted, for the context to be reviewed, and then to submit if we do it that
We
way.
could all comment and we can all monitor via email, but if we don't give you or someone the authority to actually move forward with that letter, we can't actually do it.
My point, Kevin, is like, I'm really depending on the water treatment plants here. That's where the impact is. To make that decision.
Well,
and say-
they're gonna make comments. I hope all the municipalities.
Yeah,
will
this
make-
is in addition to what we.
I know, but that common one, I'm counting on collectively experts working with all of us on our water treatment plant. And like people like Paul and Drew to bring that forward. I don't know, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what I don't know.
Right. I do agree with what you're saying, that there's a perception here where if we're silent, some public might think, well, did they even look at it? Are they even on top of this? So even a letter that says it's been reviewed and, I don't know.
Well, we made a statement that we were not gonna comment for the plans. That's what we did.
Right. We're not saying the plan.
Yeah.
Talking about us as an entity. And you might determine that we don't need to submit a letter, but again, I'm a little bit like, should we take that option off the table if we don't do a motion now?
How are you on that?
So why don't we start with, I'll make a motion that the Hudson Seven submits a letter requesting an extension from the 30-day proposed period. I don't know if I'm wording that right.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's that.
And then,
Great.
And then how do I want to word this one? Let me go.
I don't know, because we don't know what the letter is going to be, but again, I think my concern is the
Look,
lack
I got an
of
idea.
input from
I got an
this
idea.
council.
How about, I'd like to make a motion that if we find a common thread,
There we go.
if we find something that's common that we can agree to, with a common impact in terms of this, I'd like to make a motion that the Hudson Seven submit that as a comment.
Great,
Perfect.
that's perfect,
I will second that.
nice.
Do I have a second?
Me.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, we just got to find it.
Excellent.
And maybe there's nothing, but at least we have the option.
Thanks, everyone. Good.
Okay, way past time. Lead copper rule. Paul?
Well, the US EPA issued a clarification that if they give a homeowner money to replace their lead line, that they don't have to pay taxes on that. Big generous thing. But the thing that I want to tell you about is today at 10:30, EPA announced the regulations for PFAS, the forever chemicals. The limits are really low, like 4 parts per trillion. It's mostly going to affect groundwater sources, but it's probably also going to affect surface water sources. Today, I heard several talks on surface water. But this might be not, I don't know if you want to say an opportunity or to help our neighbors in Dutchess and Ulster County who might need water from us if their wells are contaminated with PFAS. I mean, we're talking a really large expense to remove PFAS to these limits.
All right, thank you, Paul. Committee reports. I'm gonna move on. Was any other comments? I want to move on. Drinking water source
You did
protection.
have one question about whether or not we wanted to continue.
Well,
the
given what he just said, I'm gonna go.
Okay, great.
I'm not gonna do that.
So DWSP two, real quick, Mike couldn't be here tonight, but he did provide an update, and I'm gonna read it. And it is that the DWSP two update, there's a confirmed a point in the emergency notification chain to ensure Hudson 7 water operators are notified rapidly. Planning to stress test the existing notification chain, and details are to come. Shannon submitted the WRF grant, and for those of you who don't know what that is, that's the Advancing the Science and Theory of Drinking Water Source Protection Monitoring via Shared Governance grant through the Water Research Foundation. So that's been submitted. It will help the Hudson 7 DWSP2 sampling priority issue. Sent water system overview data tables to the Hudson 7 water plant operators to confirm our values, and we'll be setting up the next stakeholder meeting shortly, or the next, likely to be early to mid-May. To DWSP2.
Oh, you weren't here last time. So you got 5 minutes. You had 2 charts for the lower Sopus. Remember those?
Yes, if I know how to share, I don't have my grandnephew here who's 13 years old to help me here, so I'll see what I can do.
So Paul, if you see at the bottom of the Zoom, do you see a share screen?
Yeah, I do, but it says I can't get in.
Okay, so hold on.
There's host disabled.
Yeah, there's only a host. There's no co-host option, so it's a little bit tricky. What about now? There you go.
You guys can see it because I can't see.
Yeah, we do.
We see your desktop.
Well, we see your desktop. Yeah. You just, so I would stop sharing. Stop. Oh, unless you have it on your desktop, sorry.
Yeah, I just clicked it on my desktop.
So Paul, you need to stop sharing for a sec. Yeah, and then when you share, you're gonna see a series of screens that you can select the one that you want us to see. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Drew, if you do have a minute to hang tight, we'd appreciate it to talk about anchorages. Great, thanks. Okay, you just changed your background.
There it is. Can you see now?
Yeah,
You can see my screen?
we can see, not your screen,
yet.
not yet. I'm sorry, I can't help you, Paul, on this computer.
I give up.
All right, so Paul, just talk to it. We gotta keep moving, okay?
Well, as everybody knows, I'm the representative on the Ashokan Release Working Group, which is watching over how New York City is discharging muddy water into the Esopus. And as I got into this, we started talking about flooding, and my first response, well, that has nothing to do with me. But then I started looking at some of the things, and I really think floods do affect the drinking water quality. If anything comes down the Esopus, it winds up in our intakes. And as you know, anytime we have a flood, the first thing people say is don't walk in it. Don't, if it's up to your waist, don't go in it. And, CDC says standing floodwaters can also spread infectious diseases and contain chemical hazards and cause injuries. And then EPA said flooding can also overload storm and combined sewers and wastewater systems, resulting in untreated pollutants directly entering the waterways. So I really think it can affect our drinking water. And if you think about it, it's basically just a flood is just washing over the land and everything that's in its way, oil, street oil, salt, all that gets washed into the river eventually and goes into the Hudson River. So I now am under the impression that floods really do affect the water quality for the Hudson 7. So I'm looking into that a little bit more and working with other groups to address the flooding issue.
Thank you, Paul. Drew. On anchorages.
Great. Rebecca, can you let me share my screen? You know what? Forget it. I'll go really quick. So the new with anchorages is we have the Hudson River Protection Act that was issued in November. It has moved forward and was recently, as of March 20th, it passed the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So that is moving forward. What it does is it prohibits any vessel anchoring on the reach of the Hudson River between Yonkers and Kingston unless such anchoring is within an established anchorage established before January 1st, 2021. And so what that means is that would prevent any creation of new anchorage grounds between Yonkers and Kingston for all of the future. And vessels would only be able to park at the existing anchorage ground, which is Anchorage Ground 19A in Hyde Park, and any other established area. I believe there's a couple mooring areas that are approved where smaller vessels can anchor. So those would be authorized as well.
Thanks, Bruce. Sorry about that. Actually,
That's okay.
you send that slide to me and I can share it. So, cause is it a timeline?
Yeah, it was just a little timeline to give you a visual and provide a little more history, but I will share the timeline with Rebecca. She can circulate to everybody. And if there's any more questions, I can come back next month and we can talk a little bit more about it. But I just wanted to let you know that that legislation is moving forward.
Drew, can you work with our committee on the on Chippy? Could you attend some of those meetings?
I believe there was no Hudson 7 Chippy subcommittee. Is that what was previously said?
Yes.
Drew, when you say moving forward, what progress has been made since it's been submitted?
What progress the Hudson River Protection Act has made?
Yes.
So it was originally submitted in November. Pat Ryan's staff has been working with the Coast Guard to review the legislation. We had raised a couple concerns about the original language. So since that time, the Coast Guard has asked to incorporate certain minor changes. They originally, instead of anchorage, they had the phrase anchorage ground, which is a defined term that refers to 7 specific areas within the Hudson River. The Coast Guard asked to eliminate the word ground and simply change it to anchorage. So that would allow vessels to continue to park at any established areas such as mooring grounds, anchorage grounds, RNAs, special anchorage areas. So that has been the biggest change since November.
And I'm under the impression that you all submitted requests to Brian's office for some additional input, and that was denied, right?
No, so we have a couple questions. They use the phrase established anchorage. And so we've asked Pat Ryan's office to get clarification on what that means from the Coast Guard, how they intend to enforce that language. We also would like clarification on how this legislation would apply to recreational vessels, and how it would apply to any area that the Coast Guard has to establish for safety reasons. So the Coast Guard typically establishes new special anchorage areas for bridge repairs or cable installations. And if the legislation says that they can't establish any new anchorages after January 1st, 2021, that would seem to indicate that those areas can't be established by the Coast Guard in the future. So those are a few issues that we would like clarification on before this gets adopted. And so Pat Ryan's staff is working with the Coast Guard to get a memo on those points. At this time, I haven't heard back, and I don't know if they have anything, but we're going to keep following up and keep working with their office.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Nick, are you talking about who you or Rebecca talked about the water treatment plant? Maybe.
Want to give an update?
You can give the update.
All right. So we have a water treatment plant committee now to Hudson 7, and Paul sits on it, Nick and Randy and Dottie. I go to, and we met on March the 26th, 90-minute meeting in Port Ewan at Nick's at the water treatment plant in Port Ewan. And there were also 2 water operators present.
Yep, Tim Byron and Mike Donald.
Right, so that was really helpful to get their insights. We were talking through all kinds of different things, such as shared services, an idea of creating a survey to help identify educational opportunities for the Hudson 7 water plants that are unique to the river. Came up, and we've got the survey. We're going to flesh it out a little more and send it out to the water operators. And we're discussing, we're going to have a first annual Water Operators Appreciation Week to celebrate our 7th year anniversary on May 31st. And so it'll be simple things. There might be some tours, who knows? We'll figure it out. We'll talk about it and flesh it out. But it'll be a good thing for us to do. And that'll be the week of May 28th through the 31st. And our next meeting is April 16th here at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Facility with Randy and perhaps some of the water operators. Maybe the Port Ewan folks will come too. So we're sort of building some nice space time, having good conversations, have a good agenda, and figuring out ways we can work together, which is the foundation of Hudson 7. Good work, Nick. Thanks for all of your efforts.
Of course, thank you. I appreciate it. This group as a whole has been a phenomenal experience for myself. Particularly the last 3 years since I've been superintendent. And when I first heard of this group, I more or less thought about this group as what we're actually doing now with the water plant operators. So, getting to know the inner workings of the group and being at this particular level here is a phenomenal experience. But then actually taking it back to my guys and making it a little bit more meaningful, maybe a little bit more stake in the game. That kind of looks up. Thank you.
Just so you know, when Dan Shapley and I first met on the banks of the Roundout to discuss this,
yeah,
my plan was to have a way to unite the water plants into having a common thing. So that was goal number 1.
Yeah, it's huge.
So we're finally getting there, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a great way to go about it.
Yeah.
And thanks a lot to Paul, who is just really a beacon in so much of this work and making time to come to these meetings. in person, even though it is good coffee and pastries. But it's, it's great that you come, Paul, and your time and work is much appreciated too. It's a great committee, so we're doing good stuff.
All right, thank you, everybody. It's now 6:21. I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. Take care.
Take care.